U.S. Navy history arriving. Welcome to the U.S. Navy History Podcast. I am Dale, and my XO is Steven. Hey, Steven, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Well, you're more than welcome. So, we're coming back to the Eastern Theater of the American Civil War. That's what it is.
You forgot what conflict we're covering?
Yep, for a second there. Even though I'm looking right at the CSS Albemarle, which is what we're going to be talking about here soon.
I mean, what do you think CSS stood for? Chinese sailing ship? Catalanian sailing ship?
Maybe. Or, Charlie's sailing ship.
Oh, yeah. No, Charlie was a big player in naval powers.
So, we're in the Eastern Theater of the American Civil War in the North Carolina coast area. So we have 3 more battles to go over, and we're going to talk about the CSS Albemarle. And then from there, we're going to go to the valley. So are you ready to get underway, my friend?
Let's cast off.
All right. So first up, the CSS Albemarle. This was a steam-powered ironclad ram on the Confederate Navy side.
So when you say ram, did they even bother putting a cannon on this thing?
Well, I'm going to go over all the armaments and everything like that.
Okay.
So she was named for a town and a sound in North Carolina. So she was ordered in April 16th of 1862. She was laid down in January of 1863 and commissioned in April 17th of 1864. She displaced 376 tons. Her length was 158 feet. Her beam was 35.4 feet, and her draft was 9 feet. As stated before, she was steam-powered. Her speed was 4 knots, and she had a crew complement of 150 officers and men. Now, here we come to the armament. 2 6.4 Brook double-banded rifles.
6.4 inches, centimeters, millimeters?
Oh, they're cannons.
Okay.
They're rifled muzzle-loading naval and coast defense guns.
So she got some of the new toys, but 4 knots, that is not fast.
No, it is not at all. So, let's get into her construction. So, on April 16th of 1862, the Confederate Naval Department, they were very, very excited about what they thought as offensive potential of armored rams because of the victory of the CSS Virginia over, wooden-hulled Union ships in Virginia.
Yep. Steel has a tendency to beat wood.
Yeah. So, they signed a contract with a 19-year-old Confederate lieutenant named Gilbert Elliott. He was to oversee the construction of, smaller but powerful gunboats to destroy the Union warships in the North Carolina Sounds. So the terms of agreement gave him the freedom to select a appropriate, if you want to use that term, place to build the ram. He established a primitive shipyard with the help of a plantation owner named Peter Smith in a cornfield on the Roanoke River. This is near modern Scotland Neck, North Carolina. Now, Smith was made the superintendent. Now, the reason that they chose that place was because the water there was too shallow for the Union gunboats to get there. So they didn't have to worry about the Union coming up there and blowing away their hard work before, they were able to put it out in the water.
Pretty much they got to finish playing with their toy before the Union would show up and smash it to bits.
Well, they had to finish building it.
Well, yes. It's like a Lego kit. You You want to finish building your Lego kit before your bully smashes it.
Yes. So, Elliot made his blueprints, and the Confederate Navy's chief contractor, guy named John L. Porter, he finalized the designs. He gave them the 2 thumbs up. This gave the ram a armored casement with 8 sloping 30-degree angle sides. And within the boat were 2 6.4-inch Brook pivot rifles, one forward and one aft, each of them capable of firing from 3 different fixed positions. Both of these cannons were protected on all sides behind 6 exterior-mounted heavy iron shutters, and the boat was propelled by twin 3-bladed screw propellers powered by 2 steam engines, and they were 200 horsepower and built actually by Elliot.
So this warship was powered by an engine that was less powerful than many sedans nowadays.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
hence 4 knots.
I suppose.
So they began construction in January 1863, and it continued, for quite a long while into the next year. Now, word of this gunboat reached the Union naval officers stationed in the area, and this kind of alarmed them. They went to the War Department and asked for an overland expedition to destroy the ship. But the Union Army, they were like, we really can't spare the troops. So, it's not going to happen. And of course, that decision is pretty short-sighted. She does a lot of damage before she goes away.
Yeah.
So a little bit more about these cannons. Each of these double-banded cannons weighed more than 12,000 pounds.
I'm beginning to see a reason why this thing can only go 4 knots.
Both of them were positioned along the ironclad center line in the armored casement, one forward and one aft. The field of fire was about 180 degrees from port to starboard, and each one could fire from one of 3 gun port positions and could deliver a 2-cannon broadside.
So when you say 3 fixed positions, do you mean like elevation positions, or like it was on a rail that it could adjust where it was along the length of the boat a bit?
Yeah, imagine, so there's one forward, one aft.
Right.
That would have 3 shutters that you could take the cannon out of one, move it over, put it in the second one, or all the way to the port side if you were started on the starboard side and put it out that window.
Oh, okay.
So the projectiles that she carried had explosive shells, anti-personnel canister shot. She had grape shot and blunt-nosed solid wrought iron bolts for use against the Union armored ships.
So while she's slow, she was very dangerous.
Oh, yes. She had a lot of different projectiles she could use. So, she was commissioned in April 1864 as the CSS Abel Merrill, and she was given to Captain James W. Cook, and then got underway downriver towards Plymouth. Her mission was to clear the river of all Union vessels so that General Robert F. Hoke could take his troops and storm the forts located at Plymouth. So she anchors about 3 miles north of the town, and then the pilot, John Locke, he takes 2 seamen in a small boat and takes soundings of the river. They saw that the river was actually high at this point in time and discovered that there were 10 feet of water over the obstructions. So the captain says, "Onward, boys, we can sail over that easy." And of course, their armor protected them from the Union guns at the forts over there at Warren's Neck and Boyle's Mill. So in response, the North sends the USS Miami and the USS Southfield. These are two paddle steamers. They are lashed together with spars and chains, and they're approaching from upriver. They're trying to pass on either side of the Able Merrill, trying to trap her in between them. So Captain Cook, he orders heavy starboard, and it comes very, very close to the southern shore. But he did get outboard of the south field. Then he orders hard to port and rams the south field.
And that goes about as well as it usually does.
Yeah, the south field starts to sink, and Abel Merrill's ram is actually now trapped in the south field's hull because of how hard she hit him.
Oof.
So her bow starts to go under as well. Now, as both ships are now sinking, the south field actually starts capsizing. And she actually capsized in the correct way to free the ironclad and allowed the ironclad to refloat herself. Now, the USS Miami fired a shell into Abel Merrill at point blank range, while her and the south field were in their death throes.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you can guess what happened with that shot.
It did not go well for the paddle boat.
It actually rebounded off of Abel Merrill's iron sides and exploded on the...
Ooh, okay, yeah, that went even worse than I was expecting.
Yeah, it killed her CO. The Miami's crew, they did not give up yet, though. They attempted to board the Abel Merrill to capture her, but they were driven back by heavy musket fire. So after this boarding attempt was repulsed, the Miami was like, yeah, we're done, and attempted to steer clear of the Abel Merrill and made her escape. So the Abel Merrill has successfully cleared the river of Union ships. So they now attack Plymouth and take Plymouth and all the nearby forts. So on May 5th, the Abel Merrill and the CSS Bombshell were escorting the CSS Cotton Plant, which was a troop ship, down the Roanoke River. And they encounter 4 Union warships. The Miami's back, and now supported by the USS Matabetz, the USS Sassacus, and the USS Wyalusing. I don't know why they had to be so difficult with the names, but there you are.
Well, they must have figured if we can't pronounce them, that means the enemy can't pronounce them, which means it's harder for them to track, the movement of our vessels.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, I must ask, any of those ironclads? Because if not, this is going to go very well for the CSS ship.
No, and no. They were all steam-powered, but no, they are not ironclads. Now, they did have more than 60 cannons between them.
But unless their cannons designed to pierce iron, it'll dent the hull. Might give some of the crew a ringing noise in their ears.
Well, let's find out, shall we?
Let's find out.
Okay. So, Abel Merrill opens fire first and immediately wounds 6 men working on Matabeset's 2 100-pound Parrott rifles, and then attempts to ram her. But she manages to get around the Southern's ironclad before contact was made. Then Sassacus comes by very quickly and fires a broadside of solid 9-inch and 100-pound shot, all of which bounces off the Abel Merrill. But fortunately, as they bounced off of Abel Merrill's armor, they hit Bombshell, who is a softer target, and hulls the boat, which means that she gave up pretty quickly and was captured by the Union. So The commander of the Sassacus, Lieutenant Commander Francis Asbury Rowe, his name is much easier to pronounce than his boat's name, seeing Abel Merrill about 400 yards off of their beam, decides, I'm going to ram them. And they did. They struck the ironclad full on and square on, right on the broadside. Now, they shattered the timbers on her own bow and twisting off the bronze armor that they had. And now both boats are one boat. So the Able Marines gun crew quickly fired 2 point-blank shells at them. One of them punctured the Sassacus's boilers.
And that's pretty much the end of that ship.
Well, it broke them free, and now the boat is full of steam and drifting.
With a faulty engine.
Yeah, she's drifting. She's DIW. So Miami takes out a spar torpedo and a CI net. They were going to try to use the net to tangle the screw propellers on the Able Merrill, but the spar torpedo and the net both failed. So the battle goes on, and more than 500 shells are fired at the Able Merrill during this entire engagement. Now, she did have some damage to her smokestack, and there was damage to other areas, but she pretty much didn't even limp away. She just happily steamed back up the Roanoke River as the victor and moored at Plymouth. She's like, yay, I win. Whoop, 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 whoop.
That was a fun little scrap. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah. So, throughout the entire summer of 1864, Able Merrill, she is dominant on the Roanoke. And by autumn, the U.S. government decided that we need to study this and see what we can do about this, because this is just complete BS. So the Navy considers a number of different ways to try to destroy the Able Merrill. The one that they decide to go with was submitted by Lieutenant William B. Cushing. They authorized him to locate 2 small steam launches that they were going to fit with spar torpedoes. So Cushing goes out and looks and looks and looks and finds 2 30-foot picket boats that were under construction in New York. And he said, those are now mine. Thank you very much. On each of these, he mounted a Dahlgren 12-pound howitzer and a 14-foot spar projecting into the water from its bow. Now, unfortunately, one of them was lost on the voyage from New York to Norfolk. But the other one got there just fine, and they went to the mouth of the Roanoke. Once there, they put the torpedo onto the spar. This was a lanyard detonated torpedo. So the evening of October 27th, Cushing and his men began working their way upriver. They had a small cutter with them. Their task was to prevent interference by Confederate sentries stationed on a schooner that was anchored near the wreck of the Southfield. They made it pass undetected. So Cushing was like, ooh, look what we just did. You know what? Maybe we should just capture it instead.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Because nobody knows we're here. We have the element of surprise. But that changed quickly, because as they approached the docks, they were spotted.
So close.
Yeah, they came under heavy rifle and pistol fire from both the shore and the Able Merrill. As they closed on the Able Merrill, they found that she had a defense that they did not know about. And this was floating log booms.
What's that?
That is just like, nowadays we would use floaters to surround a ship to keep like other small boats from approaching. And nowadays we would have nets going all the way down to the bottom
Right.
to keep divers from getting in there as well. So this is just a early version of that, just with logs.
Oh, okay.
Now, these logs, though, had been in use for a very long time. And so they were very, very slimy. Because I don't know if you've ever seen wood in water for a very long time. They get slimy.
Oh, yeah, they get very slick with algae.
Mm-hmm. So the launch just goes right over them. The slime helped them. So they rammed that spar right into the ironclad's hull. And then Cushing stands up on the bow, pulls the lanyard, and detonates the torpedo. I'd like to imagine he probably said something, action hero-y, but there's no record.
I believe Yippee-ki-yay, you Confederate jerks, is in the running.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good one. Now, the explosion, yeah, this threw Cushing and all of his men overboard into the water. Cushing then goes, I'm heavy. I'm going to strip off all my clothes and swim to shore. And then he hides until daylight. He fortunately avoids all the Confederate search parties that were put together to find those people that did that to their boat. So about early afternoon, he is able to steal a small skiff and begin slowly paddling, using his own hands as oars. And he just goes stroke, 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 downriver to rejoin his fellows at the river's mouth. So when he finally gets back, he is hailed as a national hero of the Union because of his daring exploits. Of the rest of his men, one did escape, 2 were drowned, and the rest were captured.
So even though they failed, the fact that they tried.
Oh, they didn't fail.
Well, what was...
They blew a hole in the Able Marie's hull at the waterline.
Oh.
Big enough to drive a wagon into.
Oh, that's not a failure. You just said an explosion, everyone was thrown off. It's like, okay, this couldn't have gone well. No, that sounds like it went pretty well. I take back my statement.
Yeah, I was building up suspense, and it seemed like it worked.
Yes, you fooled me.
She sank immediately in 6 feet of water below her keel, settling into a lot of mud. Now, I mean, her top deck was pretty much dry, but, she's down. They later salvaged both of her rifled cannons and shells and used them to defend Plymouth against a Union attack. But it turned out that it was a futile effort. So the United States Navy raised her later and patched her hull. They had the USS Ceres tow Able Merrill to Norfolk's Navy Yard, and she arrived there April 27th of 1865. Orders were then issued to repair her hull, and she entered dry dock. A couple months later, she was done. And then 2 weeks after that, she was judged, condemned by a Washington, D.C. prize court. So after she was put into the Navy, she actually didn't see any service time at all. She just remained there at Norfolk. And she stayed there until being sold at public auction 2 years later. More than likely, she was scrapped after that because we have no records of anything that she did after that at all. One of her rifled cannons was on display at the headquarters of the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Atlantic Command, and her smokestack is on display at the Museum of Able Merrill in Elizabeth City, North Carolina.
Oh, so the ship got its entire own museum after the war.
Yeah. Oh, we do have the prize court adjudication. You want to hear that?
Let's hear it.
Okay. So the date is blank. Ship type was Ram. Prize name, Abel Merrill. Gross proceeds, $79,944. I know what you want to. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Give me a moment to get it up.
Mm-mm.
The coffee I just had, I'm chewing on the grounds a bit.
That's the way you know it's good coffee.
Let me just break up the abacus. All right, hit me with that number again.
$79,440.
So, in 2023 monies, that works out to $1,452,000.39.
Now, her costs and expenses, probably to get her there, was $2,645.30.
$265, you said?
$2,645.30.
$48K, $365.19.
So $48,000 to raise the boat up and tow her and fix her, probably. And then, so that meant that the amount for distribution was $77,298.70. She was adjudicated in Washington, and the vessels entitled to share was listed as Lieutenant Commander Cushing and Party. So yes, he got, and his crew got the portion of $77,298.70. Now, if you like, you can go to the Port Plymouth Museum in Plymouth and see a 3/8 scale replica of this ironclad. It is about 63 feet long, and it's been there since April of 2002. This replica is self-powered and capable of sailing on the river.
So is it remote controlled or?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, 3A scale, you'd have to have a very, very short crew.
I mean, this is pretty big. I mean, it's 63 feet long. But, yeah, I don't know what it's powered by. The skiff that they used was powered by outboard motors, so I don't think that's historically accurate. More than likely, it's powered by modern boat motor. You could probably get a few people in that hull.
Yeah, you just have to army crawl.
You know what? There are lots of modern day equipment that we use where you have to do that to get into it. So, but that is the CSS Abel Merrill. So the battle of, or the capture of Plymouth, not much to go in here, really. This happened after, the Abel Merrill went bye-bye. And this is when the Union Naval Forces attacked Plymouth in North Carolina. And pretty much there was 3 days of fighting. Then the Confederates retreated from the area, which allowed the Union Navy to land and occupy the town. The strength of each side was, on the Union side, 9 gunboats and a torpedo boat. And on the Confederate side, 3,500 men, 22 artillery pieces, and 3 shore batteries. The casualties was, on the Union side, 6 killed, 9 wounded, and 3 gunboats damaged. And on the Confederate side were 37 captured, 22 artillery pieces captured, 3 shore battery captured. Does not sound like they lost any.
No. Sounds quick and efficient.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much it's just bombardment the entire time and until they turned tail and ran. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to honor one of our fallen angels as we teamed up with HeroCards.us. So today we are going to honor Jesse L. Brown of the United States Navy.
So when did Jesse serve?
He served in the Korean War, 1950 to 1953. His hometown was Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He was attached to the Fighter Squadron 32, USS Layette, CV-32, Fast Carrier Task Force 77. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, and Purple Heart. His date of sacrifice was December 4th, 1950. Killed in action near the Chosin Reservoir, North Korea. He was 24 years old. So a little about him. When Jesse Leroy Brown was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, he was born into a sharecropper family. He was a school athlete who excelled at math and dreamed of being a pilot from the time he was a young boy. He left Mississippi to attend Ohio State University in 1944, and his high school principal wrote to him, quote, "As the first of our graduates to enter a predominantly white university, you are our hero," end quote. Now, Brown had to work the midnight shift loading boxcars for the Pennsylvania Railroad to earn money for his education. He was able to maintain a high GPA.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. He joined the Naval Reserve to help pay for college after he saw a poster recruiting students for a new naval aviation program. And of course, in this racist time, he was discouraged from applying and was told that he would never make it to the cockpit of a Navy aircraft. But as most heroes do, he persisted, and he was finally able to take the qualification exams. He wrote to a childhood friend saying that he had made it through 5 hours of written tests, followed by oral tests and rigorous physical exams, making it through each round with flying colors. And he then stated to his friend that even though he had excellent performance and he was accepted into the program, he said, quote, "I'm not sure the Navy really wants me." He then received orders to selective flight training in Glenville, Illinois on March 1947, followed by additional training at Naval Air Station Untomoa in Iowa and Naval Air Station Pensacola. On October 21st, 1848, at the age of 22, Brown became the first black man to complete naval flight training.
So what kind of plane was he flying?
I will get to that.
Okay.
A public information officer released a photograph and story the next day after he graduated, quote, "First Negro Naval Aviator." The story was then picked up by the Associated Press, and Brown's picture appeared in Life magazine. So Brown is a section leader and flew a Vought 4 F4U TAC 4 Corsair and was assigned to Fighter Squadron VF-32 aboard USS Wright CVL-49.
For anyone who might not know what that is the plane that was made famous from the show Black Sheep Squadron.
His squadron then was transferred to the USS Lyett CV-32 in October of 1950 as part of the Fast Carrier Task Force 77 and made its way to Korea to assist United Nations forces. On December 4th, 1950, on the way to Chosin Reservoir with his squadron, Brown announced over the radio, quote, "I think I may have been hit. I've lost my oil pressure." He crash-landed his Corsair on the side of a mountain circling over the crash site in his own Corsair. Brown's wingman, Lieutenant J.G. Thomas J. Hudner Jr., realized something was wrong when Brown didn't emerge from the cockpit of his aircraft. So Hudner made a decision to crash land next to Brown's Corsair, risking court-martial and capture by the Chinese, and of course his own life by ignoring his commanding officer's directive. Quote, "If a plane goes down, that's one down. We don't need Hollywood stuff." Although I believe stuff has been changed here to keep it clean for all audiences. Hudner found Brown in pain, bleeding, and trapped in his aircraft by a damaged instrument panel, with no way to rescue him. A Skiorski helicopter, piloted by Marine First Lieutenant Charles Ward, arrived in response to Hudner's radio distress call, but there was nothing that could be done to extradite Brown from the Corsair. Brown asked Hudner to tell his wife, Daisy, how much he loved her before he died in his cockpit. As daylight dwindled and the possibility of capture grew, increasingly imminent, Hudner and Ward were reluctantly forced to leave Brown's body behind. Unable to safely recover his body, Brown's shipmates instead decided to honor him with a warrior's funeral. And on December 7th, 1950, 7 aircraft loaded with napalm and piloted by Ensign Brown's friends made several low passes over his downed Corsair. The top of Brown's head was still visible with snow on his hair when they dropped the napalm on his plane while reciting the Lord's Prayer. Ensign Jesse Brown would posthumously receive the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, and the Purple Heart. Hudner nervously anticipated a court-martial for defying a direct order and willful destruction of Navy aircraft. Instead, he received the Medal of Honor for exceptionally valiant action and selfless devotion to a shipmate. When the USS Jesse L. Brown DE-1089 was launched in 1973, Hudner was in attendance, standing next to Brown's widow. And in 2017, USS Hunter Hudner DDG-116 was christened in Hudner's honor. Ensign Jesse L. Brown, thank you. All right, XO, would you like to close us out?
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the U.S. Navy History Podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments. If you want to leave those, feel free to leave a review. The more stars, the better. If you'd like, we can even read it on the air. We do have a Discord server now. If you'd like to talk with us more directly, you can find the link to that in the show notes. If you'd like to reach out to us via email, you can reach us at usnavyhistorypodcast@gmail.com. And finally, we do have a Twitter handle. It's at USNHistoryPod. Yes, I know, this is so many things to remember, but you guys have plenty of options to reach out to us, and we hope you do. Until then, we wish you fair winds and following seas.
Goodbye. U.S. Naval History Podcast, departing.